start rolling while we... No, you can keep talking about how you're not tired.
Literally
not tired.
Awake.
Literally awake. But well, I guess now we just chitter chatter about stuff. Would you like some hand sanitizer?
Oh God, yes, please.
It's right there. That is a homemade hand sanitizer made by my husband Chris that he made me leave the house with. It is a shampoo bottle.
This and then...
You can pour a little bit in your hands. It is, just don't pour it on the mic or anything. It is a homemade hand sanitizer from a shampoo bottle. Chris dug out the old hand sanitizer that we've had for a million years. Oh, let me tell you. So it's hand sanitizer mixed with Everclear, which is like 90 proof alcohol or some shit. Yeah, I'll take a little. Why not? My fucking hands are dry as it is. My hands are just like destroyed from all this hand sanitizer. Whoa! Oh! It's everywhere. Everclear is everywhere. This is exactly what happened last night. It smells like a fucking booze factory in here now. It smells like a college dorm. Do you guys remember when you were in college and somebody would make a fucking trash can full of punch?
No.
Okay, I do. Hunch punch, I think is what they called it. Anyway, this is like a hunch punch hand sanitizer.
Why is it wrapped in tape?
Chris he took my fucking gaff tape and wrapped the shampoo bottle in gaff tape, I guess to signify that this is homemade hand sanitizer. I don't know. Last night when we were leaving the party that we went to last night, we put some hand sanitizer on and Chris dumped it all over his lap. So it just smelled... It smelled like a handle of alcohol in our car. And I was like, I sure hope we don't get... I was like, does this count as an open container? Because it's hand sanitizer, but there's Everclear in it. So does that count as an open container? I mean, I'm not going to drink it because it's also mixed.
Send us in your...
Send us in your thoughts. If I put a bottle of Everclear in my car to use as hand sanitizer because hand sanitizer is sold out everywhere... Am I going to get arrested or am I going to get praised for my ingenuity?
Now, just to be clear, this is not like a bottle of Everclear.
No, this is a mini shampoo bottle that from like a travel size shampoo bottle filled with Everclear and like some hand sanitizer gel, whatever we could, it's like, when you're out of shampoo, when you're out of soap and you put some water in the bottom.
That's like, no.
That's what Chris does.
New soap.
Chris puts water in anything. It's I feel like he says that it's like leftover from when he was like he grew up in rural Virginia.
Poor.
Yeah.
He's
like, so when we're running out of shampoo or soap, he puts water in it. If you run out of ketchup, just put some water in it. Oh my goodness. Anyway.
I will not be eating ketchup at your house.
No, right now we have enough ketchup. I try to throw the bottle away before he puts water in there. I'm like, babe, we can afford ketchup. You don't have to do this anymore. Welcome to the Feminine Mistake Podcast.
Oh,
hey. This is a podcast about women in film, mostly like watching stuff and then talking about the women in the film or the TV show.
I like the way you're throwing your head back and forth like a dog that's like hello? Like, what
like
are you
a Labrador. So we watch your favorite or perhaps films you've never heard of and TV shows, and we talk about how women are portrayed in them. And I'm one of your hosts, Nicole.
I'm Sarah. Another host. The only other host.
The only other host. There's only two of us. Often we are joined by a guest, but today it's just us. Just the two of us. I was just thinking that. So we're having a intimate recording.
A full 6 feet away from each other because of the coronavirus.
Because of the coronavirus, we are not in breathing vicinity. And we are rubbing ourselves down
mouth guards
with hand sanitizer. So we're continuing our discussion on the film Horse Girl, which is available on Netflix. So if you like the rest of us, and I don't know, this is coming out in April. I don't know what fucking happens in April. I don't know if it's become like a Lord of the Flies type situation. We're recording this in March. So welcome from the past where this whole coronavirus thing has just kicked off and we're all sort of becoming homebound. And if you are still homebound, you can find Horse Girl on Netflix and watch it. And so that's what we'll be talking about today.
Hello, future people. I hope you are well.
I hope everyone's well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope that the toilet paper has been restocked by now. That's what I hope.
I hope that as well.
So before we get into today's topic, I have a shameful confession to make.
Okay, please.
You're looking at me with those very understanding eyes.
Please, my child. Let me know.
I think it's no secret that I'm a huge nerd.
Yep.
I think it's no secret that I'm a huge nerd for Star Wars.
Yes.
I have recently my nerddom has increased dramatically. Mm-hmm. Of course, I've always been a big fan of the movies. A huge fan of the Mandalorian TV show. I mean, I love the movies. I don't want to say like huge fan of Mandalorian, big fan of the movies. That implies that I love Mandalorian more. I love them all. I love it all. The prequels I'm okay with. I love all of it, right? And then, so over Christmas, I started reading more of the comics and the books, and I kind of started, of course, Disney has now purchased Lucasfilm, so I started reading the books that were considered, quotes, in canon, because I was like, well, I might as well start there. There's like hundreds of books, like I couldn't possibly get through everything. So I've been reading some of the comics.
I think you can.
I will eventually,
Someday.
I guess. And then I stumbled across this podcast with Nicole Byer and Lauren Lapkus called Newcomers. And it is them watching the Star Wars movies, and they've never seen it, and they don't know anything about Star Wars.
Oh, dear.
And I was a little concerned at first because they did not like the first movie. And I was like,
which one?
A New Hope.
Okay.
They were like, they did not like it. And I was like a little concerned because I was like, I don't know. If they hate all of them, I'm not sure if I can. I love them. They're so funny. And so I kept listening, and they actually, by Return of the Jedi, they're like totally sold. Like they've been totally converted. Cool. And so in addition to watching the movies, they had an episode about fan fiction.
Okay.
And I have, even despite having been fully nerdy my entire, like I've always been a nerd. I've always been a weirdo. I've always been into nerdy things. I've never read fan fiction before. I, at one time, got curious about it, and I looked it up, and then I was like, I don't like this. And I just was like, I'm not going to pursue this part of my life.
Which fan thing were you looking up?
I don't remember, because I feel like it was in the early stages of the internet. Huh?
Lost?
Maybe. I was very nerdy about Lost.
Yeah.
But I want to say it was even before that. It was in the early stages of the internet, and I just was like, oh, people write stories about stuff, and they continue the story.
Original authors?
Yeah, I was like, that's fucking crazy. And I just, whatever I read, I just was like, oh, this kind of sucks. I think I read something that just wasn't well written, and I was like, ooh, well, I'm just not going to read this kind of shit. And so they did this episode where they read fan fiction to each other. And first of all, it was filthy. Like, it was the dirtiest. It made me so uncomfortable. I didn't even finish the episode. I was just like, I can't. This is fucking crazy. Like, I can't. It was like watching your parents have sex. Exactly. So, and I don't know why this led me to this conclusion, but then I was like, I wonder, I wonder what kind of, is there good fan fiction out there? Because there are people that are very devoted to this. So I just kind of typed in like fan fiction for whatever, Star Wars. And I found this article that it was like in the fucking New York Times or some shit, where they actually, somebody interviewed fan fiction writers, Star Wars fan fiction writers, about The Rise of Skywalker, which I don't fucking care about because I love Rise of Skywalker and I don't give a shit whether other people like it or not. Controversial opinion, I know. And so I through that, I found like a place where there's a bunch of fan fiction, AO3, which if you read fan fiction, you're very familiar with. And I just started poking around, and I found this author. Her name is Thea, and she goes by Disasterisms. That's her like handle or whatever, Disasterisms. And I am fucking obsessed. Like, I am obsessed. Like, I never thought I would be into this stuff, but it's like, I can't, like, I am shirking other responsibilities. Like, I will force myself to work on something like that I actually need to do, and then I'll be like, if I do this for like 2 hours, then I can just take a 20-minute break and read more of my fanfic. Like, it is a fucking obsession. I need help Somebody
Is this your
help
call
me.
for help?
This is my literal call for help right now. I don't know why, but I'm super hooked. It's like, you know, what I love about it is it's like it's often people exploring stories about the characters that you're never going to see in the actual universe. Like things where you're like, oh, I wonder what if like this person hadn't died and they were able to interact with this other character, or what if, you know, this part of the story that's never really been dealt with in the novels or in the movies, like what happened in this time period that nobody's really addressed. And this author, I've really only been reading her stuff so far. But this author, she's just like really an incredible writer. Like her writing is really good. And anyway, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about it? I feel like I've just unloaded a bunch of. You're looking at me with this shocked expression.
I don't look shocked.
Detonated a bomb in front of you.
No, I think that's great. I think
do?
Yes, because like
I feel a little ashamed.
I get obsessed about things too, and especially certain characters and storylines, and the idea of being able to explore or be taken on a journey on a story that you love, and like have thing like you were saying, like characters who died interacting with other things that were not explored. Like for example, like Harry Potter. I'm not like a Harry Potter nerd.
Tons of Harry Potter
but Harry
fanfic.
Potter is like, there are tons of characters and deaths and relationships and stuff, and like, yeah, like if you finish all the books and you're like, I want more, like, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that. And it sounds like this woman is such a good author who knows, like, if she could write her own stuff someday, or do you just want her to continue to write fan fiction?
I want her to write whatever she wants to write. I just am really enjoying the way she renders these characters. And it really kind of had me thinking two things. One, it's incredible to me that somebody that is essentially an audience member can take something and be so attuned to it that they can write these characters' voices so well. Like when I read that book that I'm reading right now, a book, if you can call it that, it's you know, it's a PDF. But this story that I'm reading is like, I'm like, wow, like I've been reading all these canon stories, and some of them are great and some of them are okay. And I feel like she gets their voices in a way that some of these other authors that have been hired to write these canon stories don't even fully get their voices. And so I'm just really amazed at how somebody can pick up the ball like that.
Yeah. Well, like there's I mean, you already know this about the like shows have a Bible, and like not authors, but writers who are hired
in a writer's room on a series.
They're able to step into the character's shoes and like write, like, because that's just like a talent they have. So it sounds like she just has that talent of seeing a story and seeing characters,
or she's
and being
just
able
like
to,
so devoted to those characters that she's just picked up on it. I don't know.
Well, like, think about this: the Simpsons has been on so long that the people who write for it now grew up watching the show. So really, the show is fiction.
Oh my God, you're right. It's a box within a box within a box. The other thing I had thought about this, besides her ability to pick up the ball and run with it like that, is that this woman is just writing these stories because she fucking loves it.
Yeah,
and
she's not hired to, and yeah.
So there are hundreds. I don't know how many people are reading this, but there's like a lot, like comments and pages of comments of people, and her Twitter page, like people constantly writing to her about what she's writing. And are
they good? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's like people just showering her with this adoration of like, I love what you're doing. Like I love, and it just made me think about what, as an artist, like what our idea of success is, you know, does it have to be like, I have to reach this certain accepted, attainable level of success where I'm in some certain category and my work is shown in certain places.
Like canon versus fanfic. Like what's the difference?
Right. Or what is the difference between somebody who makes films and those films are like nominated for an Oscar, or some film that only like maybe a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people saw it. But if those 1,000 people or 500 people or whatever were really touched and like it moved them.
Like Pigskin.
Right, like that movie Pigskin we saw. Like that movie was this short, and I don't know. We've never talked about that in the show, but
we might have.
We talked about it maybe on it. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but we saw it at a Shorts Fest and Atlanta Shorts Fest actually. And I won't get into it, but it was a movie that was like a kind of like a body horror, like horror movie about eating disorders.
Yeah, and it just really like sorry, it really affected us.
It was really. It really impacted me. And so I guess there's like a lot of times you're thinking like, oh, well, I have to get this many people to follow me or this many people to subscribe or this many people like, or I need to get funding from this place or this grant or into this festival. And like, maybe it's all about like just sharing and communicating. Yeah. And even if 5 people watched it or if 5 people heard it and those 5 people like really needed that and it really moved them, like, maybe that's the thing that really matters.
I think it does. Like when I shared the first essay I wrote and some of the people in the room were like, I understand this. Like that hadn't occurred to me. I was just telling my story. It hadn't occurred to me that
it really hit them very deeply.
Yeah. And so I think that when you share your work, it really is, like you said, like it's not about how many people see it, but it's about like what it does to the people who do see it.
Absolutely. And it just, it gave me a renewed appreciation for that desire
that
inside.
She may not be a household name, but she's affected all these
to those people that are reading her stuff. They are like hungry for it. They're like, when's the next, because she'll like update it once.
How often does she?
It's about once a week.
Wow.
I know.
Does she have a job?
She does. And
what's her job?
I don't know, but she has a job, and sometimes it's not exactly once a week, but I'm just like, I'm amazed. Like I can't fucking write, 3,000 words a week. That's insane to me. And she's updating 2 different stories. So she's writing a Star Wars in the Harry Potter universe.
Oh my goodness.
That's one, and then the other one is just like the one that I started reading was about as a story, like kind of a continuating story of like Rey, and then like Ben Solo like comes back from like the dead because there's some like he's been sent back because there's something that they have to save them from after the rise of Skywalker.
Nice. I like when he died, I was like, I want more Ben.
Well, this story has more, and it's really fucking good.
Nice.
So she's writing both of those right now, and I cannot tell you the day, because on her blog she says which date the next update is coming out, and I had burned through the first 10 chapters of this story that I'm reading. I'm not reading the Harry Potter one. I'm reading the other one, and the day that it was supposed to come out, I'm just like I'm refresh. I'm like, when is this coming? Like, when can I read more?
Ability of that for her to be like, this is when my next thing is going to be done. Like I would love to have that kind of confidence, and like this is definitely going to, like, I remember being a kid and hearing about
Sarah, we're putting this podcast out.
Rowling, who was like, I'm going to release this book this year and then this book this year.
Well,
and
you could, Sarah. Now you're writing a book. You could. Yeah. And also we are releasing this podcast on a regular basis.
That's true.
And when we started this, I don't know if we've said this on air, but I've definitely said this to you repeatedly. When we started in 2016 doing this podcast, I was like, I hope we make it through like 5 episodes. I was like, I hope we don't crap out. And just like, I did not expect that 4 years from now we'd still be podcasting. But I just love doing it.
Yeah.
I fucking love doing it. And I love talking to people about the show when somebody's like, oh, this was funny, or I thought that too when I saw it, or they just like, oh, I like to listen to it on the way to work, or like Brandon, who was our guest last month, like Brandon will text us his response to what we've said about a show or a movie. And it's just fun to communicate with people about the stuff you care about.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's hard to remember that in this place where you're like fighting for validation as an artist. It's difficult,
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, besides like who listens to it, but it's just fun to talk about it and sit across from you 6 feet away.
I know, 6 feet away with an acceptable amount of distance with Lysol in the air so that we don't catch each other's germs. All right. Shall we get back into this movie?
Yes, please.
So folks, if you're fan fiction curious, give in to your curiosity. Try
Please
it out.
do.
You know,
I approve.
it's
I
not
think,
safe for work.
I think there's no
Not
shame.
safe for work.
No shame.
No shame. No shame.
No shame.
No shame. Love what you love.
Yes.
And with that, let's get back into this movie, Horse Girl.
The house is a mess, Jack. The kids are a mess, Jack. You're a mess, Jack.
You have been a total bitch ever since you came to New York.
You seem sort of distant.
Let's just do it, huh?
You look stupid and rich. Stupid and rich.
Fascist.
All right, let's get into it.
Should we talk about when this is set?
When is this movie set? I was very confused. What do you think?
Well, there's lots of 90s attire and like
Her clothes are very 90s.
and like set dressing and like cars and
the music.
music and the store and like her hair and I don't know, everything just feels very 90s, and yet they have cell phones.
Felt like a period piece except for the cell phones.
Yes.
And I really wanted them to make a choice.
Yeah.
Like at first we were like we were debating about, like, when we were watching this movie, we were debating about like, when is this set? And I'm like, it's obviously set in the 90s. Like, listen to like the music they were playing at the party,
Yeah.
like that guy's fucking tank top that he was wearing, like
Yeah.
Brian's tank top, like everything seemed like it was some kind of period piece.
Yeah.
And she uses a payphone at one point. Like she
Yeah.
wakes up and is out at a payphone, and I'm like, this is
She uses
definitely in the
that
90s.
thing on the
Club.
wheel. Yeah.
That was the first thing. As soon as she used the club, I turned to Sarah and I was like, what fucking time period is this? Like,
Yeah.
nobody uses clubs anymore.
Well, there was even a line near the end when they were when she was in the mental
Yes.
hospital she was like,
Yeah.
her roommate was like,
Yeah.
I fell asleep in 1995 and I just woke up or whatever, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah. So I feel like if that was supposed to be about time travel, cool.
yeah,
But then I need some more hints about this not being the 90s, or I don't know. It's very unclear to me.
Yeah.
Like, it almost felt like the aesthetic was like, we like the 90s, so we're
Yes.
going to use that aesthetic.
Yes.
And for a moment, I thought it tied in, like you said, because of she's in the hospital and she wakes up and that girl that she's been dreaming about says that she's in the hospital because she thinks she's a time traveler from the 90s. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really fucking cool. But
Yeah.
what does that have to do with Sarah's story?
Yeah.
It doesn't really.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't. And we only saw that girl that one time. And so if it had been worked in more, I would have found it to be
Yeah.
very clever and pertinent, but instead it just felt like more like a stylistic choice.
yeah, it feels like there were all these sentences that began, but they didn't finish their sentences.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment,
know,
because
like-
we were certain that this movie took place in the 90s until
saw a cell
Darren
phone.
pulled out that cell phone, and I was like, well, that's not a flip phone, so this
Yeah.
is, not the 90s.
Yeah.
Or a pager, I guess. If it was the 90s, he would have had a pager.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, what is the point of, like, what does this have to do with it? Even except until they dropped that one thing. And then I was like, but still, how does this tie in? It's a lot of ingredients, but I'm not really sure what the cake is supposed to taste like.
Yes.
You know?
Is it even a cake or is it just a soup?
It's a dessert soup. It's a dessert stew. It's a dessert stew.
Sounds interesting.
It's got some ice cream. It's got some angel food.
Ooh. Don't talk about dessert.
I'm
to
so
me.
sorry.
Oh my god.
I thought
sounds so
that
good.
sounded repulsive because I
Angel
was
food and
picturing
ice
this
cream?
No,
Oh
I
my
was picturing this
gosh.
soupy wet mixture.
I love
with just like wet desserts.
Soupy wet.
Just like wet desserts.
Yes, that
You
like
want wet desserts?
like cake that has like the milk in it. You know, like the
I don't know. I
just
don't.
you don't like milky cake.
I don't like it when liquid surprises me. I don't like that. It seems like subterfuge. And I don't care
I
for
love
it.
surprise liquid.
Okay. Shall we move on to the
Yes,
next?
please.
Okay. Let's see. I think we talked about this, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. But well, you know what? I am going to talk about it. I feel like this movie is two pronged. in the sense
Two-pronged?
that it's double-pronged in the sense that it's about, I think this movie is about mental illness. Mm-hmm. I think.
Okay.
Right? And it seems to be about how people that are experiencing mental illness, one, suffer because they don't have enough people in their lives who really care about them or take care of them. And the system also doesn't seem to care about them. Right? Is that fair?
That's fair.
And I think we see that through all the isolation she's feeling, that as once she has her breakdown, people aren't really sure what to say.
Yeah.
And I don't fault them for that, because if somebody, although to be honest, if somebody was telling me that they thought they were a clone, then I would be like, you really need to see a doctor. But that doesn't seem to be helpful to her at all. She gets very upset. Yeah. But that's how I would react to that. I'd be like, oh my God, like, you're obviously going through something. Please,
That's the thing.
Please get some help.
Especially like people who have schizophrenia, like they don't, like that's one of the things you're not supposed to do is try to confront them about their, what's it called? Delusions. Because it makes them more upset and makes them
it seemed to
agitated and and
she
it doesn't
thought
help because
people
they're
were-
not going to believe you.
Yeah.
I mean, although there are people who have schizophrenia who are very self-aware and they know these things aren't real, and yet they can't, kind of like when we're anxious, like we know these thoughts are anxiety, and yet we still feel anxious.
You still succumb to it, yes.
So it's like that. It just depends on the person. But yeah, like
there were several people that tried to tell her like there was a lot of what is wrong with you, even like, and I actually did feel really bad for Darren. He
tried to help her and she would like screamed. He didn't try to, he tried to
did
get
as
her,
much as he could, given that he doesn't know this woman.
He didn't want to leave her in the
graveyard,
the graveyard, and she just screamed at him until he left, which would you have left like that? She was kind of scared.
I would have left. I would have driven down the block and then taken out my 2020s era cell phone, and I would have probably called the police or 911.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
Because if she can't, like, the fact that no one, and who knows, I feel like there are lots of parts of this movie that are maybe missing.
Yes.
And so, God, there's like so much to chew on here. Like, because at one point she goes to the hospital and her caseworker, played by Jay Duplass, who was great, like him a lot in everything he does, who he says that he was her caseworker before. So can we assume that maybe she was there, maybe she did get picked up that night in the graveyard?
Perhaps.
Apparently they're only going to keep her for 3 days.
But then in a different scene with him, he claims that he hasn't worked with her before, and we have no way of knowing which one is true.
Right. So then, is this movie out of order? Like, is that because we're seeing something out of order because she's experiencing time in a different way?
Okay.
I'm just asking. I don't know the answer.
I have no idea. That's the thing, is that once again, like, this movie doesn't have a clear thought process or opinion, or that was one of my things actually.
Okay.
That kind
of
ties into what you were talking about.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's get to that.
That's is this movie making fun of mental illness, or is it trying to like really seriously delve into it?
So what about it makes you think that it's making fun of mental illness?
The first time I saw it, I thought, okay, this is like the stereotypical type of things that people who have schizophrenia would say. It feels like this has been written by someone who doesn't know someone with schizophrenia or didn't consult someone. It felt, now who knows?
It felt on the outside.
It felt, yes, that was something else that I said. It felt like it wasn't her perspective. It felt like it was looking in. It felt like it was about her looking in from the outside, as opposed to telling her story from her perspective.
Okay.
But I just didn't know how this movie felt about mental illness, because the tone of it was not so serious. It wasn't like...
It was like a psychological drama. There was something
like not funny, but just kind of bizarre.
It had a little bit of a quirky indie feel to it, but I don't think it was... Well, let me tell you what she said in the interview,
please,
and then
I'm dying.
and then I'd love to hear you respond to this. So Alison Brie says that she had been wanting to write this, had this idea and wanted to make a movie out of it for 15 years and just really could not figure out what to do with it.
Okay.
But she had a grandmother with mental illness.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was specifically schizophrenia, but she had a grandmother with mental illness, and so she wanted to write a story about that. And so the goal of this movie was to be told from an unreliable narrator's point of view, which I think it definitely is, so that the audience would have the visceral experience of not knowing what was real and what wasn't, because Sarah doesn't know what's real and what isn't, and how frustrating and distressing that is for a person who's experiencing that, which I think they were very effective at doing. It definitely
did that, but keep going.
But as a narrative, it is kind of difficult to draw conclusions from that, because like I'm experiencing it. It's almost like I love contemporary art, and most people hate it because it's like you walk in and you're like, why is there a bucket here with a hand suspended from a ceiling next to the bucket? What does that mean? I love that stuff because I love the puzzle of trying to figure out like what was the artist thinking when they made this, and what does it make me think? And there's no right answer. So I actually love that kind of shit. And I feel like this movie is like that, where they're like, I'm going to give you an experience, and then you're going to draw your own conclusions. I think that was what their intention was.
Yeah,
And I think that's what she said in the interview was that, and this is unfortunately contemporary art and sculpture and thing is a little different than movies. We expect there to be some kind of bow, and maybe there doesn't have to be a bow. But her thing was that she was like, if people are asking questions at the end of the movie and they're not really sure what the answers are, then that's what we want. And I'm like, well, you succeeded in that.
Succeeded. But it's not self-aware.
You think that it lacks the self-awareness of playing with this without, and I don't know why, but I just made a squeezing hand motion as though I was honking a horn.
Have you ever read, it's a short story that was used as an example in my college English lit class as an unreliable narrator. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper.
Yes.
And I feel like that, I mean, it's been so long since I read it, but that is very clear. Like, it's very like...
It still has an ending.
It still has an ending. And it still has like... You can
and I'm going to hold off on talking about the ending until we get to our ending.
But you can see in the yellow wallpaper both what is happening, and you're having this experience, but you also know that it's an unreliable narrator.
And I think that this one, you do know it's an unreliable narrator too. I would actually reference another film about an unreliable narrator called Memento.
I love Memento.
And Memento is very disorienting and difficult to put together, but it does have the story has a definitive ending.
Yes, and there's a plot.
I think we need that.
There's a plot. That's the thing, is that you can have an unreliable narrator and still have a story, and still have a beginning, middle, and end. And they didn't do that.
I don't want to get to the ending just yet, but I almost feel like a stronger ending would have been for her to go through this whole fucking crazy ass thing. And I hate to say crazy as like a derogatory thing. I just mean like the journey she goes on is like so full of unexpected moments, and it's really hard to get a handle on what's going on with her and how she's going to come back out of this. I almost feel like it would be a stronger ending for her to be released after that 72 hours, and we just see her kind of walking off down the street alone.
Yeah.
Which is a downer of an ending for sure.
Yeah.
But like it would have said something to me about how like there are people out there and they again, they're dropping these little threads, but they're never really picking them up. There's that homeless guy outside of the craft store that's like yelling, and they're like, oh, well, you know.
And
or her grandmother, how her grandmother had mental illness. She died on the street. And it's like, this is what I feel like could have been the movie, could have had like a little weight to it in the sense of like, this woman, it's not her fault. Like, it's not her fault that she's going through this.
Yeah.
And it scares people around her, and that's totally understandable. But there's a lack of compassion, not just from the people around her, but from the system itself, where they're like, we're taking, like, we don't even see her, we don't see them doing anything to rehabilitate her or anything. She's just kind of there under observation, locked up in her room, and then sent away. And that's, I think, speaks of volumes about what the writers of this film felt about the mental health system. And like, that could have been a hook for some kind of grounded ending.
That's the thing, is that it should have ended in a more grounded, like, this is
completely agree.
Reality. Like, this is what is actually happening. Because there was, like, I don't know, half an hour or whatever, the last half hour, last 20 minutes, where it was
15,
like
20 minute
no
hallucination.
What is, exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about her hallucinations. There's a lot of time jumps. There's a lot of sleepwalking. We're not really sure, like, so it starts off small, and I found these moments to be creepy in a great way, and you did not find them scary at all. So I was like, I thought you said this movie wasn't scary, and you're like, but I swear to you, getting up in the middle of the night to get something out of the fridge and see someone like staring at the wall, facing the wall, fucking terrifying to me. When she wakes up in the outside of with the phone, like at the payphone, and her pajamas are on backwards, there was something very unsettling about that to me. I think it's that, like, you know, who did this to me? Did I do this to myself? Did someone else do this to me? Like, there's like an invasion there. Like, you're very like vulnerable when you're in your pajamas. And so that's something very, it upset me a lot to see that one little detail. So there were so many good things that were executed well. I cannot stop thinking about that fucking weird suit she makes with that craft project where she like sews the suit, and it's got like the mask, and it's like this weird quilted fabric.
Like pink.
Yeah, it was peach, because that color kept coming up and up and up again. Like, maybe she's trying to wrap herself in it to... Now, frankly, given that it had the mask and the gloves and everything, really appropriate ensemble for life during the coronavirus.
Yes. We should all make some.
We should all be wearing those right now.
But with a bra.
Yeah, she was not wearing a bra. And then... So it starts off small, these little hallucinations. She starts listening to conspiracy theories podcast, which is just never a good road for anybody. And begins believing that she's a clone, and she's having these dreams where she's imagining these people, which I guess maybe she saw them in life.
In life, yeah.
And just incorporated them into her dream. This is all the things that are going through my head as I'm watching the movie, right? And then she starts to think she's being abducted by aliens, and that her mother was she's a clone of her grandmother because they look alike. And then when she gets put into the hospital after that breakdown we discussed, where she's sort of naked in the craft store, she goes on this like incredibly long, bizarre, meticulously art directed hallucination scene.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about what were you anything you want to say about that?
Well, this
very
whole
long hallucination
sequence, I was like, okay, now I no longer know what's going on, but I wasn't swept away with it. I was more like annoyed with it. I was like, I literally have no idea what is happening. I don't think the storyteller knows what's happening, and that is the thing that annoys me when it appears that the storyteller is not aware of what they're saying.
Okay. And why do you think they didn't know?
Because it didn't make sense.
Okay.
And I see that from what I hear, it was supposed to not make sense, but I don't know.
Well, she leaves.
I can't put my finger on it. Like why, like what would make it work would not making sense versus why I think it doesn't work now.
It was like a waking dream.
Yeah.
Which I can guess is like a hallucination. And I don't know a lot about schizophrenia, so I don't know if that's what actually happens to you when you're going through an episode. You've studied some psychology, so you know more about that than I do.
Well, it totally depends. Like sometimes it's just something you see, like in your vision, and like a lot of times, like you know what the hallucination is, and versus what's actually there. So you see something, and you're like scared by it, or it's usually scary, but you like, but you're aware that that is the hallucination, and then like you are not the hallucination, but there's like some kind of thing over here that you're like, okay, well that's, but it just depends on the person. But like in terms of like hearing voices and stuff, there's been some debate about how we, how we have thoughts to ourselves, like I want to get that drink, or I should do this, or how it could be possible that people who have schizophrenia, they have a break in the part of their brain that can differentiate between their own thoughts and other people's thoughts and voices and stuff. So like they're hearing their own thoughts, but they're attributing them to someone else.
I thought for a second there you were saying this implied that they were capable of telepathy.
No.
I was like, you have my attention.
no, but it's like there's some kind of
they think it's someone else's.
They think it's someone else, but it's actually
and
their own
she is
thoughts.
hearing voices. She thinks that her boyfriend, they're muffled. How fucking scary would that be to wake up thinking that you had heard your roommate talking with her boyfriend all night, and then she comes home and she's like, I wasn't here. I would shit my fucking pants.
Have you ever had...
I think ghosts live among us, so that's immediately what I would think of.
Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
I've had dreams where I thought I was awake and I wasn't awake, and I was trying to wake myself up, which I think is sort of like sleep paralysis.
And you couldn't move?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sleep paralysis.
It's
and basically,
fucking
like, you think... It's like you're in the room where you're asleep and you're awake, and there's like, you can see stuff, you can see shit going on in the room, you can hear something, you can feel for me it's like someone like pressing up against
no, it's more
me.
like I'm still dreaming, but I think that I'm awake. So it's I've never had like I've woken up and I can't move. That sounds awful.
No, it's terrifying because like you're like awake and you like, it's like you're in the room, you're like your head is positioned so that you can exactly see where you are, but there's like shit going on that doesn't make sense. Like it's not real, and you like know it's not real, but you also like don't know it's not real, and you're just kind of like, I'm seeing these things, I'm hearing these things.
I don't know if I'd be
terrifying.
able to sleep if I thought that was going to happen.
You can't move. Yeah. It's like from the Haunting of Hill House.
I know, that's so fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So presumably she, in this hallucination, she walks out of the hospital, which immediately I'm like, this is probably not real because that door was locked as fuck.
Yeah.
But she even sees like, it's really hard to talk about this without talking about the ending. So it almost seems like there's like a time jump where the nurse goes from being a modern nurse to being like a nurse from like her grandmother's time period.
Yes.
And then she walks out of the hospital and makes that amazing suit, and she's like cutting through the fabric, and like the fabric reveals itself to be, there's a lot of like imaginative stuff happening here. I thought it was very imaginative, and then she ends up at Darren's house, but it's probably not Darren. Who knows what, she may have been dreaming this whole time. And then they have sex, and then it's
mid-sex, it changes to Darren from the TV show,
from Purgatory, Matthew Gray Gubler or whatever, which I actually thought was really fucking cool, because like then you're like, is Darren real, or like did she imagine Darren, like did she ever go on a date with Darren? And then they're like making suits together, and I was like, I kind of want this for her, like I kind of want her to have this fantasy. I wanted her to have a moment where she felt like somebody was like cared about her. Like her stepdad's giving her money and her roommate's trying to fix her or whatever, but at no moment did it really, really feel like there was anybody who was like taking care of her. And that made me so sad, because it makes you, I feel like I have people in my life who take care of me, and to not have that, it's just like, that feels really heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is that, but I think that's true for the vast majority of humanity. If you're going through something that no one understands, like, who is going to like step into your life and be like, I'm going to sweep you off your feet and do everything that's right and take care of you? Like, it's like, I don't know what to do. Let's put her in a hospital. Like, I don't know what to do. Let's hang out with her. I don't know what to say. You know, like if it's something that's so out there, like schizophrenia that only, I think it's like 1% of the population has or something like that. And most people don't know someone who has it. And if they do, they don't really understand it. And even I have a degree in psychology. I'm not fully read up on all of what that means. It's hard. Yeah.
So I don't even remember how that sequence ends. Like, I feel like she just kind of wakes up. Oh, she imagines that she goes to Heather's house and lays down next to Heather, and they fall asleep.
Oh, yeah, and she wakes up and she's back in the hospital room in the bed of her roommate, and that's when we hear about
who may or may not exist.
In 1995, exactly, yeah.
And she's the girl from her dream that she was having.
And at that point, I was curious. I was like, has she been in the hospital this whole time? Like,
or has she been back a couple times?
Yeah.
She's wearing the same thing both times.
Yeah. I just feel, I just wish, I don't know what I wish. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make it so that it would please me. Like,
Sure,
you know what I mean?
sure.
Like, I don't know.
I think that an argument could be made that there was a lot of imagination, but it was like kind of like what am I supposed to take away from this?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely feel that that's true. Do you have something else on your list that you want to cover? Because we're really holding off on talking about the ending here, which I feel like we're going to dig into for sure, but I want to make sure we cover anything else.
One of my questions, I think we've discussed it, but does the film think that time travel, alien abduction, cloning is real? Or
I want to talk about that during the ending.
Okay.
Because I definitely think we should talk about that. Yeah, I think the last thing we can really get into is the ending here.
Yeah.
And I think that's the question. Does this movie think that she's mentally ill? Or does this movie imply that time travel, cloning, alien abduction, that those things are real, that she's experiencing a real event?
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, I'm asking you.
I'm asking you. No.
You know what? And listeners, we did, for the first time ever, we did a watch along for this movie. And you can see how our reaction to the end of this movie. And do you remember what I said when the credits started rolling?
You were like, I do not accept that. You were like, no, I do not accept that as an ending.
I feel like the movie did a great job of putting me in the shoes of somebody who doesn't know what's going on and the unreliable narrator. All the problems that you're having with it, I do feel like there was a lot of maybe too many threads.
Yes.
But I honestly was not bothered by that too much until we got to the ending, where she is now out of the hospital. She ends up. God, I lost my train of thought. She's out of the hospital. She dresses up like her grandmother. She goes and gets the horse, which I was very concerned about that horse's welfare.
Yeah. You were like, the horse doesn't die, does he?
She walks past the craft store. They see her from the inside of the craft store walking past, which we saw at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then she takes the horse to a clearing and lays down, and the aliens take her away. Is this real? Is this a hallucination?
That's the thing, is it's played as if it's real.
I think the movie says that it is.
Yeah.
I mean, now that I've read the interview, I don't think they made a decision. I think they chose to not make a decision, which pisses me off. Pisses me off.
Yeah.
So I think, given the evidence that I have, if I ignore what they said in the interview, and I think I would like to hear what your conclusion is based on what we have and not the interview.
Okay.
I think the movie implies that the cloning and the time travel is real.
Yes.
And here's my reasoning. Because, not just because she gets lifted away at the end, but because we see the horse at the beginning when she's in the craft store, and she sees the horse walk by.
Yes.
To me, that implies that time travel is occurring.
Yes.
And the fact that the caseworker says that he's been her caseworker before, and then we see a scene where he says he doesn't know her. All of that, to me, leads up to, time travel is real. She's experiencing time travel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
you couldn't
fuck
complete
you.
it. You couldn't make it.
Didn't know how to stick the landing. That's how it felt to me.
It had a lot of differing opinions about what was going on. And I feel like you can have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different like things that happen, but you have to have a consistent like this is what's going on.
You have to have a thesis, and I don't know what the thesis of. If the thesis of this movie is, haha, maybe mental illness really is time travel, then fuck you.
Well, we'll go back to
That's how it felt
what you
at
were
the
saying
end.
about Memento. Like Memento has a thesis. Like the Memento has a whole like shtick.
Yeah.
That it does. This doesn't have that.
I feel like when your movie doesn't have an ending, which I feel like this movie, the ending seemed really slapped on there for me. When your movie doesn't have an ending, then all this other stuff that we've been experiencing starts to lose meaning, or becomes just like a series of
mean anything. That's the thing.
Like, I feel like that if there had been a definitive ending to the movie, then that whole hallucination sequence could have had a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
And the reason that it feels like a little bit like a lot of really good production design for no reason is because there's no ending. Because there's no meaning.
Yes.
And ooh, isn't it cool that maybe she's experiencing time travel and maybe she's not? That is not a fucking ending to me. That is an insult.
Yeah.
So I reiterate, I would have rather seen her walk out of that hospital with a baggie with her personal effects in it and just walk into the sunlight until we can't see her anymore and we don't know what happens to her after that. And yeah, that's bleak, but like I think that says more than like oops maybe this is time travel. Like that's like I felt very insulted by that. Anyway.
Yeah. And also like I feel like there are a lot of, I don't know if there are a lot of movies, but I feel like this is a trope with like sometimes when someone's about to kill themselves, they get like they get all their affairs in order, they get dressed up, they go do something.
Yeah.
They go.
I thought maybe
like,
she was going to
took
hang
off her
herself.
shoes
I
and
thought
like
she was going to hang herself. Not that I wanted to see that.
No. But it felt like I'm about to kill myself.
Yeah.
Was this did she kill herself? And this
Do you
was
think
just what
like
she
her
imagined?
hanging, like she looked a little bit like she was
hanging. Yeah.
Ew, that makes me so creeped out.
Yeah, but that did occur to me. Like,
yeah, it definitely occurred to me when she took her shoes off.
Yeah.
And I was like, ew, I don't want to see her hang herself. But even her killing herself at the end, I don't think would have really been a real ending either.
No.
It also would have felt like, well, we don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
I guess she's just going to kill herself.
Exactly.
Like that doesn't feel like it does justice to the experience that she went through.
Yeah.
It doesn't do justice to the struggle, and it doesn't do justice to the struggle that people have with depression. If she had done that, that would have made me like even angrier probably.
Yeah. I did like that she didn't have depression, though, that it was like anxiety and hallucinations, delusions. Because I think while people with schizophrenic can have all sorts of morbid things, like some are depressed, some aren't depressed, some are anxious, some aren't anxious. Like, but I feel like there are a lot of mental illness movies about people with depression. So it was kind of nice to see that she didn't have that.
Yeah. I lost what I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I lost it. It's gone. Goodbye.
Yeah.
It's
Just
flying
like that
away on the
meme.
end. It's evaporating. Somewhere it's hanging out with the meme that you forgot about.
Oh no.
Final thoughts on Horse Girl. And would you recommend to a friend?
I feel bad that Alison Brie, had personal experience with a mentally ill family member, and she's been thinking about this for 15 years. I don't know how many years.
15.
15 years, and that she really wanted to tell this right, and she really, she got, the funding, and, it makes me feel bad that she put all that work and had spent all this time thinking about it and had personal experience, and yet it wasn't executed the way that it should have been, and that just makes me feel sad. I know that's kind of bleak, but
right.
that's just how I feel.
It's fair. Would you recommend this movie?
I think it's weird, and I don't think it's a bad movie.
I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't think I think it has a bad ending.
Yes.
And the performances in this movie were great.
She's amazing. She's an amazing actor.
Really good.
She really felt it.
Yeah. And I think that, and what she said in the interview that I read was that, of course, she's entering a transitional period in her career where Glow is ending and BoJack Horseman, another show that she's on, is ending. And so she's got a look at what am I going to do next. And she said that there was something really fulfilling about creating something that was her own. Yeah. And so regardless of whether it turned out exactly perfect, and I think all of us know what it's like to make something and have it not quite turn out that way, or maybe you think it turned out perfect, but other people are like,
yeah.
It's I think you have a lifetime to get better at storytelling, and I agree that it's not a bad movie. There's a lot of really great things about it. The performances are great. Art direction was wonderful, and it did have me think about a lot of, like, it kept me thinking.
And the writing was not bad. Like the dialogue, there was something
that was improvised.
Wrong. What?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
What?
They wrote a very detailed outline, but according to Alison Brie, they improvised the scenes. So they had a very detailed outline of what had to happen, but the dialogue was improvised.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. When I hear about things being, like, dialogue being improvised, as a writer, it saddens me. Like, it's just like, I'm just like, I, like, work so hard at, like, making things seem like something someone would actually say and have it flow, and
that was their goal for doing the improvising as well. So I think it's just a different way to do it.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to make a movie that way. I think it's a dangerous game, but
very dangerous. Yeah,
it worked out well here. I didn't feel rambly, and they wanted it to be grounded, and it felt grounded. I'm
surprised she didn't write the stuff that she was starting to say about the clones and all that stuff, like that wasn't.
I mean, again, their outline was detailed, so it might have even been like there were certain lines they had to say.
Or like words, like keywords.
Yeah, I don't think they made it up. Like, they definitely mapped out the story and what had to happen in each scene in terms of objective, but the words that were said by the actors, I think, they had the freedom to kind of let that kind of come out.
That is kind of cool. I just wouldn't, as a controlling writer person.
Would you be able to direct something if it was improvised?
I think if I had the right
actors,
I think it might be a cool experiment. But
I've always wanted to do something.
Definitely
like
wouldn't
that.
be something that I would like do all the time.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be like,
unless you really like it.
That's true. I guess you don't know until you try.
I think that Horse Girl is on Netflix, and if you are if you're trapped in your house right now and you like weird movies, then I can recommend watching it. Yeah. I did find the ending to be frustrating, but it wasn't like after I watched it, I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't watched this. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, I wish that had been better.
Yeah.
So I'd say check it out. Why not?
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, not these. I know.
No print. I don't want any print.
Okay, nothing too busy. These are a lot of our warmer colors over here, reds and pinks.
No, I already have red. I don't want red. No.
Or yellows. This is holiday. Don't look at these. The oranges. We have a good orange over here. It's like a marigold.
Not bad.
We have these. We have these nice sort of peachy gold.
It's pretty, but the fabric wrinkles.
It's too wrinkly.
Yeah, it's wrinkly.
This fabric will never wrinkle. It's a bit darker. It's more of like a brick. Well, you said no red, but...
Oh, this is the color. Yeah, the peach. It has the right energy.
Colors have energy.
Oh, absolutely. All colors have energy. And this is very protective.
Okay, so we're gonna do the Bechdel test for Horse Girl. See if this movie stands up against the criteria of the Bechdel test. Of course, the Bechdel test to see women characters, do they have their own agency, blah 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 blah. Okay, if you want to know the history, we did do a whole episode about it in season 1. Go back and check that out. All right, so first rule of the Bechdel test: does this film have more than one female character in it?
It does.
Do those two characters have names?
Yes, they do.
Do they talk to each other?
Yes, they do.
Do they talk about something other than a man?
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely think that this movie passes the Bechdel test without question. Multiple instances of women talking about something other than men. They talk about fabric. They talk about aliens.
What their plans are after
work. About birthdays. About their fears. It's not a movie that just passes the Bechdel test on a technicality.
Yeah.
While we both feel that some of the relationships could have been explored more deeply, I do commend this movie for having what felt like real grounded relationships that, I think I can relate to in my life, and I can see reflected in relationships with other women I've known.
I just realized,
What?
would it pass the male version of the Bechdel test?
Oh, you mean if we were
If
talking
there were
about
two men who
spoke
talked
to-
about, who had names who talked to each other. Not that we need to discuss this.
No, but it is kind of an interesting. I can't think of an instance where two
Yeah.
men. And you know what? Fuck those guys.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Okay, welcome to Plug It Up. This is the part of the show where if we had a guest, the guest would tell us about all the cool things that they're doing. But, today it's just me and Sarah. And we do have a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
Sarah, you're writing a book.
Yes,
So,
I am.
you
It's
wanna tell
a
us-
personal essay storybook. Storybook. Illustrated. Just kidding.
It's the illustrated story of Sarah's life. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
personal essays.
David Sedaris, Lindy West. I guess those are the two main that are like, they have like humor, but they also tell like really like deep kind of stories. So that's kind of what I'm going for. But yeah, that's what I'm up to right now.
And we had the privilege to read some of it at a writers group, and I'm really looking forward to more. It was very, very deeply touched everyone at the writers group, so it was a really good essay. And so we don't have a lot of details about it right now, but once
because it's just starting out. But I'm working on a website and new like accounts so I can get a following. I guess
Sarah's a wonderful writer. So as soon as we have more details about when you get that up and going, we'll plug that, because guys, I mean, this fucking book is going to be amazing.
Oh, thank you, Nicole.
All right. So are you also on our YouTube channel? We've got a bunch of other stuff there. We've got our podcast that we're now putting up there, and sketches, films, web series, all kinds of fucking fun shit. Fun shit. What? And the tutorials, yes. Also, every other Tuesday, Critical Crop Top is releasing Tutorial Tuesdays on our YouTube channel. It's me teaching you editing, little bite-sized tutorials. So
And
if you
just
want,
so you know, Nicole is a professional editing teacher. So these
that's
are
true.
like legitimately like these
this
are
is
the
not
real
your
deal.
This is not your fluffy.
No, this
editing.
is not just some rando
This
on
isn't
the
someone you pulled off the street
internet. Exactly.
to ask you to teach you.
This is a
Premiere.
professional.
I try to keep it concise. They're they're short, like 5. Some of them I think might be 10 minutes or so. Just little bite-sized things to teach you the basics of editing, how to set up a project, how to, all in Premiere so far. That's what we're learning about. How to set up a project, how to get all your footage in there, how to sync picture and sound. All that kind of stuff that you need to know to get your project going. So check out Tutorial Tuesdays, also on our YouTube channel. So if you subscribe there, you'll get our watch-alongs. You'll get all of our old material. I'd hate to say old. It's not old. It's not past its prime.
It's not past its prime. All of our previously made material.
Evergreen material, I think is what they call it.
yes.
And Tutorial Tuesdays, which you'll get every other Tuesday. Also, you can subscribe to this podcast, the Feminine Mistake Podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. We're all over the place. And if you would kindly rate and review and subscribe, that would be awesome. We'd love to hear what you think about the show and any suggestions you have for any movies that you'd like us to do in the future.
Yes, we will do this podcast until we die.
We will.
We will watch every film ever made.
It's true. Until there's no more films, and we'll be like, I guess this is the last episode because we've watched all the films. And you can also find us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Feminine Mistake Pod, and on Twitter at Femmistake Pod. Tell us all your horse girl thoughts.
All of them.
All of the
If you
thoughts.
used to be a horse girl.
Yeah,
if you
did
still
you get
are
it
a horse
wrong?
girl.
If you're still a horse girl and you want to come to bat to defend horse girls, I don't feel like we were harsh on horse girls, but give us your horse experiences.
You keep saying horror.
What?
Give us your horror.
Give us your horror. I'm getting a lazy mouth. Is this a symptom of the coronavirus, lazy mouth?
No.
Oh, no. It's happening right now. Sarah, Rise of Skywalker came out early to keep us in our homes.
Let's do it.
Do you want to watch it?
And let's eat stuff.
Let's eat stuff and watch. Whoa. Don't know what to think about that.
Food.
Let's eat food. Let's eat food. Hopefully they'll deliver my food this time.
Oh my God. What if we just do two separate orders, one for you, one for me?
Yeah, it's like there's some kind of bad karma we have when we order the same thing. Either your food doesn't get delivered or mine doesn't get delivered. This is the most complainy modern problem shit. There are people out there like, fuck you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to enjoy some takeout and sit far away from each other. Mm-hmm. Wash our hands constantly. We're going to socially distance while being together.
Okay. Sounds good to me.